Hello Bookfinders, it is Thursday, February 16th. We are still talking about The Fault in Our Stars. For anyone who is wondering, doesn't know already, next month we are talking about the importance of being earnest, so you still have some time to read that before that discussion gets started. Just to warn you beforehand, this video will contain spoilers for both The Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska, so if you haven't read either of those books, you probably shouldn't watch this video. We do have a week of spoiler-free videos at the beginning of February. If you're hoping for a Fault in Our Stars review, you can check that out. For everyone else, let's get on with it. So over the last week, what I thought was a fairly harmless question has turned into a giant Looking for Alaska versus The Fault in Our Stars debate, which is not something that I ever intended. Like, first, I don't think it's a very productive conversation, because your experience with the book is completely subjective, and nobody is going to change the way that you felt about the book, so trying to argue which is better is sort of pointless. But more than that, I don't think it's even a particularly interesting question. Now, I think that you can compare these two books because they do deal with similar subject matter, though I do agree with Kalinda that the only real comparison I think you can make between John Green books are Looking for Alaska and Paper Towns, particularly because Paper Towns was written as a response to Looking for Alaska, so you're sort of supposed to take them both into account, I think. These ones, I think you can compare them because they deal with similar subject matter, which is death, but they deal with them in very different ways. Like, in Looking for Alaska, it's about dealing with the death of someone, the way death comes unexpectedly, and dealing with the aftermath. Whereas The Fault in Our Stars is about the fact that we're all dying, and what sort of implications does that have for the way that we live. The question that I was really trying to pose last week, and apparently that didn't come across, is what is it about these two books that speaks to you, and why one more than the other? But in this video, I really want to talk about Augustus Waters. Now first, I want to say that the fact that you may have predicted Augustus's death, I don't think is a valid criticism. I mean, this isn't an M. Night Shyamalan movie. The point isn't the plot twist. It makes me kind of irritated in the same way that I get annoyed when people criticize the last episode of season 2 of the BBC show Sherlock for being predictable. It's like, well, yes, of course it's predictable. This story has been out for over 100 years. The point was not to surprise you. And I think the same can be true of Augustus Waters in The Fault in Our Stars. Though, just a quick insert here, just because it was written in first person doesn't mean that Hazel couldn't have died at the end. I mean, like, I still stand by, like, the point is not the plot twist, but she could have died at the end of the book, and it wouldn't have necessarily had to have been in the Imperial Affliction sort of way. Just because it's first person doesn't mean that she had to have died. I mean, this isn't like Moby Dick, where you have the Ishmael living the story and the Ishmael telling the story, or even the same is true of Catcher in the Rye. You have two characters telling that story, whereas with The Fault in Our Stars, Hazel is very present throughout the whole thing. It's not a different Hazel telling what happened. It's Hazel living it right now. So she could have very easily have died at the end of the book. So I don't think that the fact that it's in first person really gives anything away. But that's not the point. I think particularly in The Fault in Our Stars, one of the major themes is that sometimes you can see death coming, and technically you always can, because we will all die eventually. So seeing Augustus's death, predicting it, doesn't affect that point at all, I don't think. In fact, I think it even makes it stronger. And I think we are supposed to realize that Augustus is dying before Hazel does. I mean, there are lots of clues all throughout the story, starting fairly early on, that Augustus is going to be the one that dies. So I think you're supposed to predict it to a certain extent. It's not supposed to be a quick jab. You're supposed to see it coming. Now, I do want to respond to Kalinda's point about Augustus trying to make his life significant. And I think this really ties into the idea in the book of some infinities being bigger than other infinities. And when you find out that you are working with a smaller infinity, you can react in, I think, 3 primary ways. Like, first, you can rebel, which I think we saw with Alaska in Looking for Alaska. I mean, she wasn't rebelling over the fact that she was dying too soon, but she was sort of rebelling about the injustice of her life, and that her infinity is smaller than other people's infinity, even if it's not in such a literal way of dying even though that's what she did. The second way is that you can just shut down and accept your fate and wait for the end to come, which I think is what we see with Hazel at the beginning of the book. And then the third way would be to try to make your life meaningful, which is what we see with Augustus. And I don't think that that's a reaction that you can really criticize. Like, for a normal person, you can expect to live 70, maybe 80 years, and as such, you have all of these small opportunities to make tiny, significant things. You can build a family, you can have a job where you have meaningful connections with your coworkers and you feel fulfilled and satisfied, and all of these small things sort of culminate into a significant life. But when you find out that you only have 16 years and most of those years have already been used up, there's more pressure to do something, whatever it is, to do something that makes your life meaningful. Because everybody's death is pointless, but life doesn't have to be. This book reminded me a lot of somebody that I know, and I have known her since she was a very young girl. She has a disease that means that her life is not going to be very long. When she was young, she thought she was only going to live to maybe her mid-20s, and it's been extended now to where she'll probably live into her 40s, but she grew up with the knowledge that her life was going to be much shorter than most other people's. And something that my mother has said in response to this girl a few times is that some books are longer than others, but that doesn't mean a short book can't be a good book. I think Augustus was just trying to leave behind a good book. Okay, so now I'm going to comment on some of the comments that I got and video responses from the last couple weeks that I haven't gotten a chance to respond to yet. On my last video, a few different people were saying that In Abundance of Catherine's was their favorite book, and they thought it sort of got the shaft. And I definitely agree. Abundance of Catherine's is one of my favorite John Green books. It's at least as good as Looking for Alaska, and I think it really gets the shaft. Even from John, he doesn't talk about it nearly as much as Paper Towns or Looking for Alaska or even Will Grayson, Will Grayson. So yeah, I agree. Abundance of Catherine gets the shaft in a lot of ways. And Dragon Boy 092, you know, I watched your video, and it is a good thing you live so far away, because I would murder in cold blood for those copies of Sherlock Holmes that you have. If any of you haven't watched that video yet, I'll put a link to it somewhere, probably an annotation, I don't know, we'll find out when this gets posted. But all of you should go check that out. It's a great video, and I want his copies of Sherlock Holmes. Alright guys, that's all that I have for you this week. So Julia, I will see you tomorrow.